The NAACP is back in Madison, and we will talk with the new, or perhaps not so new, leaders this morning on For the Record. Good morning, I'm Neil Heinen. It was a slightly uncomfortable anomaly here in Madison that for several years there has been no local chapter of the NAACP. But earlier this year, local leaders successfully got Madison rechartered. There are many reasons to welcome the organization back to our community, not the least of which, obviously, are the challenges identified in the Race to Equity report. I'm pleased to welcome to For the Record this morning NAACP Madison Chapter President Gwen Jones and First Vice President Nino Amato. Thank you for joining me this morning.
Good to be here.
Madisonians know you both. I mentioned new leadership perhaps for this chapter of the NAACP, but certainly not new to the community. Gwen, just talk a little bit about why the chapter was not here for a while, what that meant, what it took to get it going again.
Well, what it took to get it going again was back in December, a group of people got together. Betty Banks, who you may know, Gotti Bendian, Francis Huntley Cooper, Julene Wiggins, Greg Jones. Yep. A lot of us sat down at a table along with Linda Ketchum, and we looked at Madison and Dane County. And what we saw was a community going through some very trying times. And we asked ourselves that very question: where is the NAACP in all of this? Where's the voice? And the NAACP, even though it was here, there was no voice. Nobody was speaking to the issues. And what we decided was, okay, let's talk to the NAACP and see if we can actually do a charter for Dane County. Because the minority community in this area, it's more than Madison. We have a Browning in Dane County. We have people who need, to have a voice across the county. I contacted the NAACP National. They gave me permission to go forward and brought it back to the group. We said, let's do it. And we chartered a Dane County branch in about a month. They said we had to have 100 members. We sent that charter in with 196. We stopped just short of 200.
And 196 checks.
Yeah,
right.
So
and
people,
we stopped just short because we were making a point.
Yep.
There are people in this community who really want this voice, this civil rights voice, to be here and to be heard.
Why is that voice so important, Gwen?
That voice is important because there are so many people with issues that have no voice. And the NAACP since 1909 has been speaking for those people. And that's what our intention is. Because for people who have no hope, they truly feel hopeless, and somebody has to stand up. We have a lot of organizations in Madison that are really very, very good. I mean, they're doing great work.
Yep.
But none of them have been here since 1909.
Yep.
The NAACP has the legacy of action. The NAACP has the presence nationally, and we want to bring some of that back to our community to help effect a change.
As someone who's been working in social justice for so long, Nino, can you help put that in a little context for us? The NAACP's relationship to organizations like the Urban League and Centro Hispano and some of the organizations that
and it's not just organizations of people of color, it's organizations like the Coalition Wisconsin Aging Groups. The issues that are facing Dane County faces all of us.
With whom you are still
which I'm president of.
President of, yep.
If you really go back to 1998-99, we formed a task force on race relations to deal with the racial profiling and traffic stops and what we can do to basically improve the relationships environment here, including the economics. The good news is it got support from the school board, to the county board, to the mayors and everyone else, and the city council, and they implemented about 6 of those recommendations. One of them was a Goodman Pool, incubator, and I can go on. There's about 13 recommendations that were totally forgotten, and those recommendations are relevant today. So what galvanized us to come together in December was the lack of void And I even saw that in the state legislature for the last 5 years on issues like Medicaid and Medicare, on poverty-related issues, because a growing segment of poverty is also the elderly, who are also people of color.
Yep.
And so there was nothing coming out of Madison. And then you also have to look at the shift. Madison no longer represents the majority population in Dane County. And so all the more reason why we decided to form a county chapter and to be active in the state. So we will be at the legislature and we'll be engaged in communities around Dane County.
Gwen, what do we need to know about the NAACP nationally and its role, particularly in the context of its history? I mean, it's one of the most important historical organizations in our nation. Where does it stand today? What's its health today?
Its health, I believe it's on an upswing. I really do. We have, I don't know if you're familiar with the Moral Monday movement.
I'm not.
Okay, Reverend Dr. William Barber, who is the NAACP president out of North Carolina. He is the head of the Moral Monday movement based in North Carolina. But what he, as the chair of the board, is looking at, and what the NAACP is looking at, is a way to build coalitions. We're about coalition building right now. And these are coalitions where we may not have a lot of the same interests, but we have enough commonality that we can come together to address issues that are detrimental to people. And he calls those moral issues. And actually, the NAACP of Wisconsin, our state conference, was the first conference in the North to join the Moral Monday movement. So we're working here out of Dane County to help support that endeavor as well. So what we're looking at things such as the education of our children. We are looking at poverty. We are looking at state laws that are negatively impacting people of color, such as voting rights, things of that nature.
Yep.
So those are things that the NAACP is really focusing on these days.
Well, I don't want to just let it go that there are a lot of organizations that are working on these issues. When we come back, let's talk specifically about what the NAACP brings to these particular issues, and we'll do that in just a minute.
Okay.
I am back with Gwen Jones, who is the president, and Nino Amato, who's the first vice president of the NAACP chapter here in Dane County, a recently reconstituted chapter, which is already have more members, I think, than a lot of people thought there would be in a very short period of time. But Gwen, before the break, you mentioned some of the issues that the chapter was working on: education, health issues, economic empowerment issues. A lot of groups are working on those issues. They're clearly important. They're right at the heart of the Race to Equity report. But what does the NAACP bring particularly to those issues?
The NAACP brings a history of fighting for those rights for people, and it brings credibility to it as well. And I think in Madison and Dane County, that's very, very important, because when people think about all of the disparate organizations, there's one coalescing organization from a national perspective, and that is the NAACP. And that is really what we're focused on pushing forward, so that our communities, from Stoughton to, the far reaches of Dane County, that they know that the NAACP is here and they're fighting for those rights in this county.
And those issues are pretty common across the board. Let's take the issue of Medicaid expansion. We have a lot of coalitions: Wisconsin Hospital Association, the Wisconsin Medical Association, NAACP all supports that expansion. You take the issue of reapportionment. We want competitive elections so we don't get into this polarization, preventing voter suppression. And you got people on all sorts of issues. So we're really coalescing along bringing the people together. And in regards to the Justified Anger group, we have now been meeting on a regular basis to make sure we coordinate our efforts. We know what issues we're all going to get behind and those who may advance some. And so we're trying to really bring the community at large and all of Dane County involved in this effort. And it's not just a black or white or a brown or yellow issue.
Right.
It really involves all of us, especially when you look at the state report that Children and Family put out,
right,
that says Wisconsin is behind Mississippi, Alabama, Arkansas when it comes to taking care of kids of color. And then when you look at the income inequality, we are way behind. We have really dropped in the Midwest from the standpoint of employing people. And the issue is combined now with poverty, racial disparities, and income equality. And we're really at a stage in this country and in Dane County that we have to come together as a community because we're not ready for the new future as we see in 30 years a declining white majority. And when I published the book with my co-author, 13 years ago,
Yep.
Today's Hidden Racism,
Yep.
it's all about racial disparities, and we call it polite apartheid. I never thought when David and I were sitting here
Talking
12,
about that
13
book.
years
Yep,
ago,
right.
that we would have such a report out.
Yeah.
We were looking at the nation as a whole. We never thought that Dane County would be one of the worst in the country.
Let me ask you about two questions, two issues that you brought up. The first, reapportionment, voter suppression. These are political hot button issues. And now, as I think about it, these would be issues where the NAACP would have a voice where perhaps other organizations would not have a similar voice. Because, as you mentioned, the history, the tradition, and the credibility of the organization. Is that right? Would we expect a more political voice from the NAACP?
Absolutely. And I think that's the voice that you're going to see, and that's the voice we really felt was lacking. And a lot of that had to do with our state leadership as well. That has changed. So now we have more focused state leadership. We have changes at the top of the NAACP nationally, and we have the new Dane County branch who is willing to follow that direction and speak to those issues.
Yeah. Well, and you mentioned justified anger, and I just want to ask about that because fairly soon after Reverend G and other members of that coalition began speaking out, there was a conversation about does it need an organizing group, an organization that can pull all of these disparate voices together. It would make sense, I think, that the NAACP would be that group, but will that be comfortable to the other people involved?
Well, you know, that really is not our intent.
Right.
Because each of the organizations, they have a voice, and there's a place for everyone in this community to speak to the issues as they see them. The one thing that we're attempting to do as a coalition, as a group of people, is to know and to support where we can what each other are doing, because we do have issues that we can coalesce around, and those are the issues that we will stand together on.
And that's why conversations are going right now with the Urban League, Central Hispano, NAACP, also combined with Lucha. And many of these people who are in those other entities were also members of the Task Force on Race Relations, who are appalled at what has happened. So has there been a formal entity? Not yet. But really what the city of Madison and its other communities and county government need to do is almost create a strategic task force like Tony Earl did for the state and refocus where we need to go. And I have to say this, and I've said this to both executives, it's time to put aside your difference and come together. Because if we don't address this issue, it will only get worse. And we're supposed to be leaders, and we're now at the very bottom of the political process of really taking care of people. Because if you look at it, based upon the report, Dane County is a health hazard zone for anyone of color. And that's not the Dane County that you and I grew up with and others grew up with.
Sure.
And we need to reverse that.
And I do want to acknowledge that it's early. You know, this has only been
A month.
Right. So these ongoing relationships and things are a work in progress.
Yep.
Right.
But it's interesting just to sort of get the initial lay of the land.
And the other thing is we're a nonpartisan entity. Okay. So we're reaching out to everyone, and I'll give you, for instance, when we got in our our charter membership, we were still active unofficially, and we attended a statewide meeting. We invited Congressman Jim Sensenbrenner to come in and speak because he's been pushing against the state Supreme Court, among those 5 conservative justices, to really put back in the Voter Rights Act what needs to keep those states accountable.
And he made the statement there, is that right? Was that the convention where he made a very public statement?
Absolutely. Right. And he's come under a lot of fire. But we cross whatever partisan lines there is to bring people together, and we vote on the issues. And we're finding a great cross-section of people. When you had talked about, is the voice of people of color being heard? The voice of everyone's being drowned out because of money and politics. And that has led to a very bad democratic system that we're facing. So we have a big tent philosophy, bring everybody in, and I'm glad you pointed out we're just beginning, but there are a lot of people with great track records who get things done in this community in a quiet way, and there is a general consensus. We come together.
And the Freedom Fund Gala is coming up. We're going to talk about that and more of what is in the immediate future of the NAACP Dane County chapter right after this. My guest, Gwen Jones, the president of the NAACP Dane County chapter, and Nino Amato, who's the vice president. I want to explicitly invite people to join the organization if they're interested, but also just to maybe you could help them. What should they be looking for? What's coming up? What role will public role will the NAACP chapter be playing here?
Well, on Saturday, August 9th, we're going to have our first ever NAACP block party, and that's going to be held on the lawn at the Madison Labor Temple from 2 until 6 p.m. It's a free event. It's a family-focused event. We are asking people to come out. There will be free food, free entertainment. They'll have an opportunity at that point to actually join the branch.
So this feels like the first, we're back, come on, get to know us.
Absolutely, absolutely. And we're just looking for a really good day, and it's a rain or shine event. So even if it's raining.
Tents.
Well, I don't know about the tents, but umbrellas.
Okay.
And there's a structure in place. There's a committee structure. Greg Jones is heading up the Political Action Committee for Dane County and the state. I've been asked to head up the Health and Environmental Justice for Dane County and the state. And so we're looking for people who, one, want to be engaged and can contribute to those efforts. So when you're talking about, reapportionment, that crosses every line of race, equality, and if you look at health, it's the same issue. So we're looking for people who want to engage. I think the fee for annual fee is $35.
It's 30.
Or $30. And, it's a small donation, really, when you stop to think of the bigger cause. And we're looking for people who truly not just want to serve on committees, but want to be action and move forward. For instance, on the referendum of minimum wage and expanding Medicare, about a third of the counties now have that on referendum. And in my other capacity, I'm running around the state with others to get those votes on. We want to engage the NAACP in doing just that because those issues are supported by national. And so if people want to be engaged, this is the way to do it and have, I think, momentum behind you.
Now, you've both kind of mentioned this, but maybe we need to be explicit if we haven't been explicit enough. NAACP is very much an organization for all people.
It absolutely is. And if you look at the Dane County branch right now, I am so proud to say we have one of the most diverse NAACPs that I think I've ever encountered. I mean, because we just have different ethnic groups represented. It's age diverse, gender, it's all of that. And I think, honestly, when people start thinking about the NAACP, they think that National Association for the Advancement of Colored People.
Right. I was hesitant to even use those words because they seem so archaic.
Exactly, and it is archaic. I mean, that's 1909 speak. Okay, but what people fail to realize or fail to remember is that the NAACP in 1909 was formed by a diverse group of people. The first leadership in that organization, along with Dr. Du Bois, was white. And the NAACP over the years, because of its focus on minority communities, has become associated with being an exclusively minority organization,
Right.
which it indeed is not.
Right.
And I think Dane County is very, it represents that very, very well.
This is an organization where white people can work on issues that are important to them.
Important to
When you
them.
look at the national charter of the NAACP, of the 78 members, nearly 70 were white, and it's evolved over time. And when you look at the Moral Monday movement, that has also
Yes.
evolved from being minority or people of color versus intergenerational, interracial. And so we welcome everybody, and the issues really, when you stop to define them, crosses every political boundary.
Well, you know, minorities, an archaic word as well.
Minorities is a very archaic
In
word.
25 years,
Right.
whites are going to be the
Exactly.
minority.
Right.
All right, we have 2 minutes left. Talk about the gala coming up as well.
Okay. The gala will be held on Saturday, October 18th at the Sheraton Hotel, and we're looking to have a wonderful time. The Freedom Fund Gala is the NAACP's primary fundraiser.
Okay.
Okay. That is where we generate our operational dollars for the upcoming year, and we are going to have a lot of operational expenses because we have work to do. In addition to the gala, we are planning, well, we will be hosting next May of 2015,
Yep.
the State Convention's Education Summit here in Dane County.
Okay.
And that will be a statewide event. But there's one thing I really would like to mention before we are done.
Yep.
And that is our AXO program. The AXO program is an initiative that was started by Vernon Jarrett for the NAACP, and it's a youth program. And it is a scientific and arts showcase for
Spell that
youth.
for me, Gwen.
ACT-SO.
AXO. Okay.
AXO.
Okay. AXO.
Yes. And many years ago, we had a very successful AXO out of the Madison branch. And this is back when Francis Huntley Cooper was the president. And AXO has also gone dormant. I am so looking forward to bringing AXO back because we have so many talented youth in this community. And the reason to bring the youth in, we want to get them engaged and involved in the NAACP as well.
That's great.
Because if you start young, that's when you'll keep them.
There's a new website that is
Yes.
that is live this week, I think,
Live
right?
this
We'll
week.
direct people there. Welcome back. Thank you.
Thank
Nice to
you.
see you both again.
And thank you,
We're going to
Neil.
wrap up For the Record right after this. My thanks to NAACP leaders Gwen Jones and Nito Amato. We'll see you next Sunday for another For the Record.